Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka Mono Bluetron, back again with another episode of 10-Minute Testing. Now, as I'm sure you've all figured out by now, there's a new ban list on the block, and aside from the light butt-touching it gave Zoo by banning Norden and limiting Speedroid Terror Top, it also conveniently unlimited a slew of powerful Magician cards right before a Magician product needed to be pushed. Huh. So, with our Wisdom Eyes in tow and our Skull Crabats, joking, let's jump into deck edit. So here's the list. Now there's a lot of shenanigans going on here, so as always I will give you a little bit of a description about the archetype, an overview of what I hope the deck will be able to do, and as always, the card by card. So first, for those of you who don't know, Magicians are an archetype of normal level 7 monsters used by Yugi on the show. They're a series of pendulum monsters that have received a lot of undue hate while Konami was busy slaughtering Pepe. One of their critically important cards, Pendulum Call, was limited, one of their best playmakers, Wisdom Eye Magician, was also hit, and Skullcrabat Joker was bungled for reasons completely unrelated to Magicians. However, now they're all back. Most of their monsters are either 1, 2, or 8 scales and routinely destroy themselves, setting up big pendulum summons right out of the starting gate, and now, with the most consistent and important parts of their engine back, maybe, just maybe, they'll be playable. This deck has a very single-minded game plan. We're going to use Wisdom Eye and Skullcrabat Joker to find the Magicians that enable us to plus very hard off of individual Magician destruction, then cycle through the Magicians in our Pendulum Zone. This should theoretically allow us to make a Pendulum Summon of 5, which will in turn change into a couple of Star Time Magicians that will plus us even further, or maybe even some Red Eyes Flare Metals that will, actually win us the game. To make sure our opponents don't just run the hell over our board of big dumb dudes, we're also playing Space Time, Pendulum Fusion, and extras to ensure that we'll also have something to do on their turn. It's kind of similar to OEM, but as Magispectors lost their luster and Magicians got more support, I've taken to calling the deck ZARCLESS Magicians. So, let's jump into the cards. First are the Magicians, and we are playing a critical mass to ensure that we always have enough redundant guys to use for pendulum summons. 3 copies of Wisdom Eye, which has some irrelevant-ass monster effect, but pops itself in order to snag a different Magician from your deck to your Pendulum Zone. After that are 3 Astrograph Magician. They can self-pop in Pendulum for Stargazer, but I don't really like that card. I care much more for its monster effect, which specials itself when a card pops, and then adds a monster from your deck to your hand with the same name. Fantastic with Wiz. 3 Iris Magician, which targets a monster and doubles the damage they do, then pops itself, adding a Pendulum Graph card from your deck to your hand with its monster effect. 3 Black Fang, which is the first mediocre Magician we're playing. It halves an opponent's monster's attack and self-pops, then reborns a guy from graveyard when he's destroyed. We're playing 3 just for that spicy critical mass, also because he's a 4-star Dark Magician, which is relevant for other cards. After that is 2 copies of Violent Poison Magician, who pumps a monster's attack by 1200, then self-pops, then destroys a face-up card once he's dead. Now we're into the bad Magicians. 2 copies of Dragon Pit, which will discard 1 Pendulum monster to destroy 1 spell or trap on the field once per turn. 2 copies of Oath Dragon, which can add a card from your extra deck to your hand, although it is useful for a recurring Wiz. Toon Magician specials a Magician from your deck in defense when she is Pendulum summoned from the hand, a 1-card Ignister, but neither can be recurred. Noble Dragon is the recurring Synchro Material, but her utility is pretty limited, so we're only playing 1. Finally, there is a 1 of Timebreaker, which sort of Omegas if he's the only guy you're Pendulum summoning. I'm testing him for now. After that are the non-Magicians. 3 Skullcrabat Joker, which finds, everything. 2 Oedipus Dragon for Sky Iris targets, and 1 Unicorn for that feisty game that we get to cheese out. After that are the spells. We are playing a lot of wonky 2-ofs for reasons that should become clear almost immediately. 2 Pendulum Call. This is honestly a little bit of a nombo considering the direction the deck has taken. It can only be activated if you haven't activated a Magician effect yet this turn, and it prevents your Magicians from being destroyed even by themselves. Still, it searches 2, so we're playing 2. Duelist Alliance, which finds any of our Pendulum spells, only 2 because of the OPT. 2 Pendulum Graph of Ages, because the first one always dies. This allows every Magician who dies to float, and prevents your Magicians from being targeted by spells in your zones. 2 Sky Iris enables destruction plays. 2 Terraforming finds the Sky Iris. 1 Pendulum Fusion is searchable and makes Vortex Dragon, and 1 Space-Time interrupts our opponent's plays. In the extra, we have 2 Star Time, who rotas for a Dark Spellcaster and protects your guys. 1 Tomato Dragon, 1 Abyss Dweller, 1 Trapeze Magician, all 3 Utopia Boys. Big Eye, Absolute Dragon, Flare Metal, Star Eater, Ignister, Meteor Burst, and of course, Vortex Dragon himself. So, with that, let's jump into the game. So, since we're playing a format that doesn't technically exist yet, and since YGO Pro makes it deliberately hard to find anyone playing anything but the current format, we're playing against playtesting partner, friend, and occasional personality on this channel, Gavone. For our first of 3 matches, he has elected to use a Unizombie Synchro deck, and unfortunately this hand looks much better going second than it does going first like he is. We've opened pretty well. Any hand with Skullcrobat Joker is good in my book, and as long as this Omega that he makes does not banish it, we should be in the clear. He's going to go ahead and summon Unizombie, discard this Performance Trick Clown, immediately get it back, and then go immediately into an Omega, hoping that it is enough. It isn't, of course, not going to be enough, and after I activate Sky Iris and he banishes Dragon Pit Magician, I see that I am in the clear. We're going to summon Skullcrobat Joker in order to get Wisdom Eye, set this Toon Magician so we can activate Wisdom Eye, use Wisdom Eye's effect to get Iris, use Sky Iris's effect to get rid of Toon Magician for an Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, set this Oath Dragon Magician to return this Toon Magician back to our hand so we can use it, use Iris's effect targeting the Perform Pal Skullcrobat Joker because he fulfills the condition, get a copy of Pendulum Graph of Spacetime, set Toon Magician as our 8, and then Pendulum Summon for, my lord, this is a pretty board. We'll immediately go into Ignister, and that's the game. This second game really shows the extent of plays that are possible with this deck. We are going first, and our opponent is on Paleo Frogs, a deck that, God, I hope is not an unfortunate casualty to the grass limit. We have opened quite well as well. We're going to use this Terraforming to get a copy of Sky Iris, which we will refer to as Sky because there's another Iris. Immediately pop this Wisdom Eye for Iris, use Astrograph to get another Wisdom Eye, set Sky, use Sky to pop Iris, get a copy of Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, use Iris's effect to get Pendulum Graph of Ages, set Wiz, pop Wiz for Black Fang, use Pendulum Graph of Ages to get a copy of Toon Magician, then Pendulum Summon 4. This is going to get us an Ignister, a Star Time, and a copy of Astrograph on our side of the field. It also allows us to have a Skullcrobat in hand for potential plays next turn. Our opponent is going to set 6 pass. We have a lot of play here. We're going to start with an Ignister trying to shuffle this card back in, which I know is Dupe Frog. That's all they ever set. So they flip up the Lost Wild to negate our effect, which is unfortunate, and then they Morella in order to send another copy of Lost Wind. That's not great. We're going to use Pendulum Graph of Ages, and then set Wisdom Eye Magician, add this Toon back to our hand in order to get an Iris. Then we'll start cycling Irises. We can target different guys and add different copies of Pendulum Graph cards from our deck to our hand. Then we'll play Black Fang and Pendulum Summon 2, knowing that there's a Solemn. This allows us to sort of bait it out while still establishing a pretty powerful board. We'll start attacking. He's going to Lost Wind just for the Shrink effect, and we still get in for, a couple thousand damage, so we should be able to kill him on the crackback, and you'll notice he's almost out of resources. This Morella is not doing him any favors, really. We'll flip up this Space Time just so I'm going to be able to destroy this Swap Frog at the time that I want to, knowing that he has it in his hand. I'll activate it as soon as he summons it, just because I don't want him to get 2 activations off, potentially. We'll get this Aegis off of the Destruction effect and the Iris back off the Black Fang effect. He's going to go into a Toad, which is okay, but really not enough at this stage of the game. And once our standby phase happens and he activates the effect, we'll change Space Time in order to destroy it. It goes to Graveyard, and he concedes. Well, it had to happen. Tired of losing to this Magician deck, our friend Gavone has swapped onto the boogeyman of the format, Zodiac. He's playing a plant version that includes Kaiju, a build that I think is incredibly teched out and hope to share with you at some point in the near future. For now, you're going to have to be satisfied watching it kick my teeth in. He's going first, which does not bode well for us. Our hand is pretty good, but unfortunately doesn't play well around Disruption. He'll go into Hammer Kong, into Bullhorn, use both of Bullhorn's effects to add a copy of Scrap Goblin, then normal summon this Orpheus Scorpio to get Darling Cobra, get back this Trick Clown, and get a copy of Brilliant Fusion. After that occurs, he's going to be able to go into a couple of Xyz, an Invoker, and an Emerald. This Brilliant Fusion is going to get Seraphonite, then using the extra normal, he'll go into an Omega, go into Leica, use Leica's effect to special this Hammer Kong from Grave, go into Tiger Mortar, attach the Rat Pier from Grave to Hammer Kong, and then end on a Drident. So this is pretty unbeatable for me. There is a copy of Drident, there is a copy of Omega, and of course there is a Cyclone and an Imperial Order set. We'll start with a Skullcrobat Joker in order to get ourselves a copy of an actually good card. He's going to Omega away the Alliance, and oh, that's really what I did not want to see. We're going to go ahead and play Pendulum Graph of Ages, which he Cyclones. That's one more resource we don't have, and as we set these 2 Wisdom Eyes to start the chain going, what does he flip up but Imperial Order? And because they have the same scale, 5, we can't do anything. There's really nothing that we're going to be able to do to stop this. During end step, he will detach for Hammer Kong, of course, and then this is lethal and a half. He's going to destroy his own Hammer Kong to free up space for 2 copies of Viper, attaching them to Drident, then normal summoning this Thoroughblade for several thousand points over lethal. Zoo is number 1 for a reason, folks. So we're back with the deck. In all honesty, even though that last game looked like a bit of a slaughter, I'm convinced the deck isn't that bad. I think my gripes with its inability to chew through strong Zodiac boards is really just a general gripe about the nature of this sort of turn 1 format. The deck is incredibly resilient, scales are hella easy to find, the turn 1 setups are strong, and the crackback potential is amazing. The difference between 2 and 3 Wisdom Eye is seriously night and day. It feels very clee how easy it is to barf back a full board of guys that had previously just been sitting in your extra deck, and I think the flexibility of the rank toolbox combined with the ease of making Vortex Dragon means the deck at least has some ability to disrupt whatever Zodiac nonsense your opponent is doing on their turn. Truthfully, I would be pretty surprised if this didn't make at least a little bit of a splash in the meta. So that's that. I hope you enjoyed my court-ordered hyping of the cards in the new set. If you want to see me play the decks I make on this show on stream, I'm on twitch.tv/monobluetron every Monday and Wednesday from 10 to noon Eastern Standard Time. Links are in the description. And if you have a certain idea for a deck or archetype that I could build on a future episode of this show, let me know in the comments section below and I'll see what I can do. Otherwise, I'll see you Tuesday.